am James E. And welcome to Roar, Season 2, Episode 4. And what we're roaring about is the future of our democracy. We've had almost 250 years of democratic elections that have been not necessarily unquestioned, but never questioned the way they have been today. And we've had 250 years despot-free, tyrant-free, and to some extent, that's in danger. So we want to speak up and speak out and preserve our democracy. And how are we going to do that in an atmosphere of fear, people being killed in the streets by government agents? People are afraid. They're afraid to speak up. But if enough people do, then there's nothing to be afraid of. They can't get all of us. And but in any case, I'm going to bring on Rick Rosner, co-host. Hello, Rick.
Hello.
How are you today?
I'm all right.
And let's dispense with the thing that's the most topical, Trump's speech yesterday. I don't know if you watched it.
No, I saw it was whatever he released the talking points early. And
right.
It's been much discussed, and he may have touched on other stuff, but it was primarily him reiterating his BS about the 2020 election being stolen.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
And it was considered so insufficiently newsworthy that two of the three broadcast networks decided not to carry it. And CBS, I think, started to carry it and then cut away from it. Also, CNN didn't carry it. And they said if he says something newsworthy, we'll cut in with that. But there's been not much discussion about it. It didn't make any headlines. It didn't get a headline on Drudge, which, is my main news aggregator. He was just playing an old tune.
Yeah. And also an old tune that has been discredited as being out of tune.
And so it's been well substantiated that our elections are pretty dang secure. That even if you look at the Heritage Foundation, an ultra-conservative think tank, they have the Election Integrity Project, where they keep track of every documented instance of election fraud over the past 30 years. And according to their own statistics, the rate of fraudulent votes being cast is about 1 vote in a million, 2,000 votes out of a total of 2 billion votes cast over the past few decades.
Yeah, and the other thing he brought up was he thought that Venezuela and China had tilted the elections. Venezuela by messing with the voting booths, and that's been debunked entirely. And China is doing information gathering. This is taking public information and using it so that they can learn how to best influence people in future advertisements and future campaign, probably, but not to change any votes, not to do anything that change any votes in 2020.
Trump and his followers have been yelling that China is getting a hold of voting information. And this is true.
This is true, yes.
Because you can buy, the various states will sell certain information about, demographic information about voters to anybody with the money to pay for it.
Right.
And what you just said, that China is interested in seeing U.S. voting patterns, maybe for future propaganda efforts.
Absolutely. And why wouldn't they buy it?
Yeah, but it's not that they've infiltrated us.
No.
They paid for demographic.
Publicly accessible, yes.
So
yeah, just more nonsense and utter nonsense. And the thing is that some people believe them.
All right, his stuff is nonsense. He's taken it to court 60 times over the past, and only once did they find some small nugget of where they could rule in his favor.
People could move closer than they to watch the election.
Or I forget what the one.
Yeah, it was a question of distance away from, and so it was a minor thing having nothing to do with election fraud.
Now, so my background is in statistics. And I've seen sophisticated mathematical arguments that people have. It's not that shenanigans absolutely don't go on. Nixon versus Kennedy, 1960, there was voter shenanigans to the tune of hundreds and thousands of votes in the city of Chicago, which was controlled by, the Mayor Daley's machine,
right?
And machine by it was a party that really just ran rampant over the city while they but analysis shows that even with the flipping of, I don't know, 1,000 votes, it didn't, that was a whisker thin election, but even there the shenanigans in Chicago did not affect the outcome of Illinois' electoral votes, did not affect the election. However, I've seen very subtle and sophisticated mathematical analyses of 2016, 2020, and 2024, which just does show anomalous voting patterns in bigger precincts, as if somebody was flipping some votes in the precincts that have a ton of votes, figuring that those flipped votes wouldn't be noticed among. But this is a really sophisticated argument. Nobody can really offer a plausible, chain of evidence as to how that might have happened. And because it's subtle and requires, some sophisticated math, we have no time for that in America. Right. We barely get through the basic arguments, right? So maybe at some time in the future when AI runs things, they will, sometime in 2040, and AI will release a report that says that, our elections were screwed with 20 years in the past, but we don't have the bandwidth or the sophistication to really parse this. And certainly America's dumbest president doesn't have the sophistication to address this.
And even the false claims about Venezuela and China, he dismantled the agency that was responsible for looking into foreign influence.
And one of the biggest talking points on Twitter today is who was in charge of who was running the country in 2020 when the election was stolen? And how come it got stolen, which was Trump? Why did the election get stolen under Trump? And Trump won the elections that were under Democratic presidents. Under Obama, 2016, Trump wins. Under Biden, 2024, Trump wins. So the whole thing is nonsensical.
Yeah. And the fact that he can't let it go, that says something about him as well. Because any person that is a leader of a state, a national figure such as Trump, can't keep bringing up past grievances without lessening people's respect for him. Now, there's going to be 1/3 of the country that nothing he says is wrong and everything he says is right and believes whatever comes out of his mouth. But I think more people, not only just Democrats, but independents as well, are just fed up with this kind of narcissistic behavior. And I think that's going to be reflected in the midterm. It's been reflected in the special elections.
Well, you can't underestimate the percent of people who just don't pay much attention.
That's also true. One of the things that the founding fathers hoped for was an informed electorate, and we're failing when that comes to that. We're not failing.
Okay, so sorry, I keep getting all interrupted.
That's all right. Go ahead.
So we're failing at comprehension in general. We are getting stupider. I know I'm getting stupider. And there was a big old article in the Atlantic on the death of reading. Because of the way we get information now, we have no patience and no ability for the sustained concentration and thought it takes to slog through a book anymore.
Right.
And there's all sorts of evidence that I read the first few pages of Charles Dickens's Bleak House.
Oh, yeah.
because in the Atlantic article, it mentions a study at a couple universities in Kansas where they gave the first 7 paragraphs of Bleak House to a bunch of college students and said, what's going on here? And they couldn't answer the most basic questions about it. It describes in somewhat colorful language the miserable setting of a courthouse, because I don't know how the whole book goes, but at least it starts off with this lawsuit among family members in the 1830s, 1850s. It's been going on for generations, where most of the people who started suing each other are dead, but still this rolls through the court. And so it talks about what a shitty environment a courthouse is, with everybody playing their roles and the wigs and these Kansas college students could not even get this basic fact out of reading this passage.
Right. And this is a segue, but did you ever read The Trial by Kafka?
I read The Torture Artist, I think. I don't think I read The Trial. That was a short story of his.
Yeah, it was a slim volume, if that, and it was like but the theme was, someone's being charged, but they never tell him when he's being charged.
Right.
And so it was one of those things where Dickens was always a kind of a bleak author to begin with. You had to kind of settle in and read him with knowing that you're going to experience some sort of despair. But he was tough to tackle.
But you can't even experience despair if you don't understand what you're reading.
That's a great point. The lack of understanding was your main point, and I agree with it, that we now are influenced by TikTok, where 10-second videos, and they tell me that even this podcast is too long for people to understand, to pay attention to. So it's like cut it down into short sound bites, which is the way that we're influencing people. And so people that get their information through short sound bites can't possibly have the information necessary to make informed decisions about Netflix.
Netflix tells the people who write screenplays for their productions that every few minutes you have to remind somebody with dialogue has to tell somebody else, remind people what the situation is, because. And it's unfair to expect more out of people, because the way you don't watch Netflix the way you watch a movie. You go to a movie and you paid, I don't know, now probably a night at the movies for 2 people is probably $50 or more. You've paid your money. Maybe you're going to pay attention. Netflix, you part of your cable bill. You're sitting at home. I fall asleep in front of Netflix. So I'm going to lose the thread. People lose but the Netflix says people aren't paying attention. And you have to remind people what the situation is every 5 minutes or so.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
So so we can't have competent voters.
Right. Well, even so, I think, maybe this is just rose-colored glasses that I'm looking at it. I think people have gotten enough information, and also people are feeling the pinch at the gas station, grocery stores, and they're knowing that the promises that Trump made about fixing the economy and that sort of thing, they aren't coming true. And
but that requires people to remember what they wanted out of Trump a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when they voted for it.
Mm-hmm.
And so right now, gas national average about $3.95 a gallon, $1 more than it was a year ago. Can people be trusted to remember what gas was a year ago? Some people can. I think some people can't. So the way Trump has close to 40% approval. I believe that if you cut that in half, and I've said it before, 20% of the approval is people not paying much attention and, not even giving much of a shit. Legitimately, like, how much is life different under Trump than it was under Biden if you don't watch the news? I don't know. You don't give a shit about eroding civil liberties and brown people being shot for no reason.
It affects them, not you. Yeah.
So 20% of the people who approve of Trump would approve of any president. They're not paying attention, but they're like, America, right or wrong, not in a fanatical way, just in a distracted way where they're living their lives. I think of people like somebody a little younger than us, maybe, who has parents in their 80s, and they're one of them has early dementia, and they're taking care of them, and they maybe have a kid who's in their 30s who's maybe got some issues themselves. They've got grandkids. They got a lot of shit going on, and they're just like, the president, fine, whatever. And then another 20% is MAGA lunatics who just suck up everything that comes through right-wing media, and they're like, yeah.
Interesting. And but that 40% approval will not carry elections.
Not if you look at midterms, if you look at percent approval and then the number of seats that the party in charge, the party with the presidency, loses, then Trump is likely to go into the midterms with the second lowest approval since they started measuring approval under Harry Truman.
Okay.
And Truman weirdly had the lowest approval. He had 33% approval because what happened was World War II ended, and prices, after years worth of people sacrificing to, they gave up their steel. They gave, no new cars, no, victory gardens, ration books after
and buy a bond.
Right. So the war ends. Truman becomes president in 45. By 46, the midterms, prices had gone skyrocketed, had gone crazy, and people were super pissed.
Right.
And he did really bad. And there's a high correlation between how pissed people are and how many seats in Congress the ruling party loses.
Right. And there is a good historical record of the party in power losing seats in the midterms. But, funny that Trump is complaining about 2020 with his made up imaginary complaints. But he's doing everything in his power to rig this election.
Yeah, though, as we, if you watch Pod TV, we're not on Pod TV, but you and I often end up on. Anyway, if you watch this kind of show, if you've seen us before, you probably know that elections belong to the states according to the Constitution.
Right.
It doesn't mean you can do whatever you want as the state, but you can set up reasonable policies to collect, count the vote. If you want to count votes that arrive, as long as they're postmarked by election day. And they show up within a week after election day, you can do that. If you want to send everybody in your state, like Oregon does, a vote by mail ballot, you're allowed to do that, as long as
that's what Trump is going after, vote by mail.
But he is, but he can't do anything about it.
I don't think he can either.
As long as the policy isn't demonstrably bogus.
Right.
And there's nothing on the face of vote by mail that is fraudulent. And you could make arguments that, in fact, it has less potential for abuse than voting in person, because everybody gets a vote by mail ballot. That's a paper ballot, and it's a thing. It's not some kind of electronic blip in a machine that you. So
Yeah, we're more comfortable still with paper, but that will change, especially in the era of AI. But we must also say, this man is putting his image on the passports. He's going to release a dollar coin
And so I
with
mean,
his image on it.
that's ridiculous bullshit, because it's against the law to put the image of a living person on coins and stamps, and I think paper money too, right? But that's just one more thing. He's going to do it anyway.
He
And
doesn't
who's going to
care.
stop him? However, the thing I like about the coin is that if you're a Trump fanatic, you're constantly getting scammed with Trump products. The
Right.
Trump phone, piece of crap.
The Trump
Took a
Bible.
year to get to people. Trump tennis shoes, $250 for some kind of a shoe that you could buy for $20 on Temu. They're always, all sorts of Trump commemorative this, and like, if you're the child of someone, say some 78-year-old Fox News viewer, who buys all this stuff and contributes to Trump, and you're trying to stop your mom or your dad from spending your inheritance on bullshit. And they'll tell you, the 78-year-olds say, these are collector items. They're going to increase in value tenfold. No, they won't. And that money is gone. However, with a Trump coin, at least, that's maybe, I'm hoping, less subject to being a scam, because you should be able to go to your bank and give them $1 and get $1 coin. And at least that coin will always be worth $1. And so that's some small hope that if your lunatic dad or mom, buys 1,000 of these, at least you'll have $1,000 in coins when they pass them on to you. On the other hand, I know that the bullshit won't stop with these, that they will sell they'll figure out a way to sell them for $50. They'll sell the proof ones, the ones that are taken right off the stamping line and then handled with cotton gloves and then put in a special plastic case, right? So they don't get a fingerprint. They're in perfect condition. Those they'll sell for $50 or $100.
Yeah. The Trump brand, I think, is he has an exaggerated sense of the appeal. If he slaps his name on it, it'll be popular. People will buy it, and that people have been ripped off with Trump University, for example.
That started his presidency in 2017. The first thing he did was pay $25 million to the victims of the Trump University scam.
And he just paid, was it 5 million? Something
5.3 or something, yeah. With another 83 million because Trump, there were two rulings against him. He libels E. Jean Carroll. And they rule against him to the tune of $5 million, and he's pissed. So he says the same shit again. She takes him to court again. This time they rule against him to the tune of 83 million. I don't know where that one stands, right. But it's subject to the same, further legal. I assume since that was the second case that it's still working its way through the courts, and I assume the outcome will be the same.
Yeah, and even though the ruling is now, I think he's exhausted all of his appeals on the first one, the 5.3 million.
The money, which was in escrow, I guess, has now been sent to her and her lawyers.
Wonderful.
And she's in her 80s now, so she's probably pretty happy. She's, when you're in your 80s, yeah. Like, what is she going to do?
She'll to go through that, all of that.
Yeah, but like, I mean, in terms of like, she lived a pretty fun life.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think like she's not going to feel any need to blow the whole five. I think the lawyers will take a third of it.
And I think she does feel satisfaction that she fought, and she fought him not just to a draw, but she won.
Yeah,
he did everything he could to defame her, and the court system actually worked. And no matter how he abused the court system with the repeated appeals and all of this kind of stuff to drag it out as long as humanly possible, there was an end to it. and she was paid. That has to
Yeah.
feel pretty satisfactory.
So I've got another story to talk about. So in
Okay.
the past week or so, ICE has shot two really innocent people to death. People whose they weren't citizens, but their immigration status was secure. And one had been here for 35 years, put
Oh,
3 kids through college, was, checking in with the system regularly, wasn't the person ICE was going after, wasn't the worst of the worst, was, free of any kind of criminal charges. Just both these guys are unquestionably like regular, decent people. And it just came out that the guy who shot the guy in Maine has had issues with mental illness and violence. He's 37 and he's had issues with mental illness since he was 12.
oh my
And issues with
goodness.
violence. His wife divorced him in 2009 because of violence, where he threw a pot of boiling water at her while she was holding their child.
Oh
And
my
this guy
goodness.
has had repeated tangles with the system over being violent and crazy. And this is the guy who shot the innocent dude in Maine.
And this is the guy that was an ICE agent.
Yes. So it says terrible things about ICE's background checks. We know they're shitty at that. And also their training. That people, ICE agents are put on the street with as little as 6 weeks training. To be a cop, I believe you need at least like 6 months, 8 months. You go to the police academy,
Right,
at least
right.
in any big town. Maybe there are little towns where they just like they deputize you.
Right.
But yeah, the ICE agents, like, we don't learn much about them because they wear masks. They tend to not release. They tend to not admit that they're ICE agents. But if we found out about, we would find a zillion of these guys who are horrible motherfuckers.
And the thing is that they are backed by the federal government.
Yeah.
And the federal government is now employing these people to to carry out his immigration policies, is the nice way to say it, but to kill American citizens or people who are here legitimately and are posing no threat. They are not the worst of the worst, as you said. They're not part of a drug cartel. These are not the types of things that you would say, okay, that was in the line of duty type of thing.
So I'm going to ask AI, how many people have ICE shot? I think it's at least 10.
And what's your preferred AI?
I just go to Google. It used to. So if I had a preference, it would probably be something else, because I communicate with people who are really good at working with AI, and there's some insane, like Chat GPT. They've got this version called Fable that is. I'm the king of IQ tests. I used to take dozens of IQ tests and always get the highest score in the world. Fable is better at IQ tests than I am.
I see.
So
never heard of it.
So under Trump, ICE has shot 10 or 11 people to death. And we know that some of these were under very hinky circumstances.
Right.
Nobody's been charged yet. None of the ICE agents shooting these people to death. Now, maybe this last one, where the guy is demonstrably a violent lunatic, maybe that will finally lead to somebody being charged.
And they always claim that they were being threatened by the car.
Yeah, but there's in many cases, there's video evidence that shows that's not the case.
Right. So their excuse has been proven to be false in certain cases, anyways. So this is, again, there's no accountability. They're getting away with stuff that was unthinkable when I was growing up. There was the song "4 Dead in Ohio" that I still vividly remember. when the National Guard shot 4 people at Kent State. This was an outrage, and the whole country was up in arms about this. And now people, I guess, are just sloughing it off.
Well, because my mother-in-law, when she started suffering from dementia, she'd explain her inability to come up with words or get confused. She'd say there's a lot of stuff going on.
Okay. Yeah.
And I say that all the time. We've all got a little bit of dementia now because there's a lot of shit going on.
It's hard to know it all. Yes.
Like Mitch McConnell, probably a vegetable. We haven't heard. Mitch was taken away in an ambulance 33 days ago. And his people claim Mitch is doing fine. If the deal is what they want him to apparently be alive until August 3rd. If they can keep him alive and apparently mentally sound until August 3rd, they don't have to hold a special election, which the GOP in Kentucky, right?
Okay.
Yeah. They don't have to hold a special election, which they consider risky. Some wild card might get in, which might screw up the main election in November. So the thought is that Mitch McConnell is in an ICU someplace in a vegetative state, and if they don't have to admit it for the next 2.5 weeks, they can get away with not having to replace him.
Does he have a sister? Maybe they can just replace him with his sister.
Yeah.
But in any case,
what I'm saying is that we forgot about it because there's all this other shit going on.
Right. And that's one of the things when the blockade is on, the blockade is off. The blockade is on. We are going to put tariffs on. We're not. So whatever Trump says one day, he might say the opposite the next day. And so we've kind of also gotten this little fatigue factor of today's news is going to be different tomorrow.
Habituated. We don't require Trump to have any consistency.
Right. And so it's easy to tune out because it's not something that you're going to get a president who says something and it's going to be the law of the land, or it's going to be part of societal change, an inspirational thing that everybody does and is behind. No, none of that matters. So even the fact that they I know ABC didn't carry it. I don't know what the other one was. But the fact
NBC didn't carry it. CBS started out carrying it and then just quit. They cut away from it.
Isn't that amazing that a president would want to get time and he's not newsworthy enough?
There was a speech Biden gave in 2022 that the networks decided not to carry.
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, good. Balance. Fair and balanced reporting by Rick Rosner. Well, is there something else that we want to roar about? Because I want to keep this short because I've been criticized.
Let me just click over to I had one more thing, but I forgot what it was. Oh, Trump has invited himself to the there's lots of nonsense. He's going to be sitting with the president of FIFA at the World Cup finals.
Yeah, I think that's going to cost FIFA's president his job, but it won't cost Trump his. Yeah. Well, we've talked about the FIFA, and some of these organizations are not necessarily the kind that we can hold up as shining examples of how to do things right.
FIFA's been known to be,
manipulable,
corrupt for a long time. We only pay attention to it once every 4 years.
Yeah.
Here's one more thing that's ridiculous.
Okay.
Which is Hegseth and testosterone.
Oh, right.
So Hegseth says that all troops, all members of the military, age 30 and over, are going to have their blood tested for testosterone levels.
Even the women?
Even women. And if your T levels are low, testosterone, most people should know this, that testosterone is the male hormone. It's what makes you manly. Right, it gives you muscles. If you take a bunch of steroids, which are synthetic testosterone, it can make you really aggressive. Though I've known people on steroids. I took steroids myself, and a lot of these people are very courtly. They have very good manners because they know that they're full of rage drugs, and that if
Juiced.
they allow themselves to get pissed, it could be bad. So there are a bunch of huge guys like John Cena. I don't know if he ever took steroids, but he's a huge guy. And he's the nicest freaking guy in the world. He's done more Make-A-Wishes than anybody else in history. So if you're a good guy on steroids, you can continue being a good guy. But anyway, they can also make you really pissed. But anyway, Hexus says if your T levels aren't what you want them to be, and if you're in the military, the military will pay to get you some synthetic testosterone so you can be more manly, which I consider freaking ridiculous for a modern military. The most effective military right now in the world is Ukraine's military. They make 19,000 drones a day.
That's amazing. Yes.
They throw about 10,000 of them a day at the Russians.
And what is the T level of the drones?
0. They're plastic. but how much T does it take to be the guy working the controls?
He's living in the past.
The lifespan of a Russian soldier on the front lines before they're killed or wounded is 20 to 30 minutes.
Wow.
It's brutality that Russia loses 35,000 troops to death or injury a month because Ukraine has this drone force. Meanwhile, the U.S. has $1 trillion military budget, is asking for another $500 billion, $500 billion on top of that. 500,000 million more dollars. And if they get that, we will spend more money on our military than the next 18 nations combined. And what the hell? And like in this, Ukraine is able to do this war fighting on a shoestring, and we're still fighting some past war. Steroids were invented by the Germans during World War II. The Germans threw all sorts of drugs at their troops to have them fight more fanatically. The meth, they had them on meth, and they tried it on steroids. And
I think the Vikings did something too.
Maybe they had them eating like goat gonads or something.
They did berserkers were on something, I think.
All right, so. But that was World War II. That was 80 years ago. Yeah. And modern war fighting.
Yeah.
You
want the people with the best thumbs.
Yeah.
But and not to mention his blocking the promotions that the military had authorized of men of color and women.
Yeah.
And is that his job to do that, to block what the military?
It's his job to listen to input. Like we talk about Lincoln is famous for having what was called what Doris Kearns Goodwin called a cabinet of rivals.
Yes.
Where he got a bunch of people that he thought were
great historian, by the way. Yeah.
And so he makes a cabinet full of people who don't get along and who don't get along with him. In his cabinet, I just read, he had 3 people who'd run against him for president in the 1860 election that he won. Yeah. And so they would have these cabinet meetings, and I guess they would have vigorous discussions. And Trump, when he has a cabinet meeting, they just kiss his ass. And it's the same thing with Hegseth. Hegseth fires all the generals who he
gives them good advice.
Yeah. And so he's undertrained. He never rose higher than a major. He was never on a leadership track. If you are shooting to become a colonel or a general, you take specialized courses at the War College. So every time you have 2 to 4 years to move up in rank. Mm-hmm. And in that 2 to 4 years, you are expected to take a ton of courses, to be in leadership positions.
Right. To
And
learn how to be.
Exif didn't do any of that.
Right.
Exif dicked around. It was in and out of the reserves. He was a loudmouth on Fox News with a good-looking cubicle head.
Yeah, and Trump liked that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now we don't have a Department of Defense, we have a Department of War.
Again, with which that cost $125 million to do the name change.
Shudder.
And what does it do? What does that name change do?
Yeah, it turns our perspective from, instead of trying to defend people from unwarranted attack, to the people that do unwarranted attacks, make war of choice a reality, and instead of trying to stop it. And he still thinks he should get a Nobel Prize. So this couldn't be, I don't know if Kafka could write this, but he, if he was alive today, I wonder what stories he would be talking about, the insanity of what our government is doing.
You can get AI to do, you can ask
That's
AI.
true.
You can just ask AI, say, write a picture of today as if it were written by Kafka.
That's a great idea.
And at this point, AI is well able to do that.
I agree. Yeah. So, Rick, thank you for being on the show today. I really appreciate your input. You roar with the best of them. So I want to say that, I hope that we can continue to do this season 2. Normally we have a season for 12 episodes, and I think you're good for that.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So take care of yourself and others. And thank you for the show.
You too.
All right. And that was Rick Rosner. And we're going to roar again offline. Take care of yourselves.